Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 3 Wide. I'm your host, Rodney Crawford. Today, we're going to be going over the action we saw from New Hampshire Motor Speedway where Martin Truex Jr. dominated to get his third win on the season. We'll discuss how he is setting himself up to be the favorite going into the playoffs, as well as that playoff cutoff line where it is getting tighter and tighter. We'll go over the drivers that are in the mix and how they shape up for this final 6-race stretch before the playoffs begin.
So before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. If you're looking to get an upgrade or update on your hunting apparel, then hunttoharvest.com is where you need to go. Well, right now you can go check out their spring 2023 collection where they have numerous shirt designs for both turkey hunters as well as fishing. Also, they have a sale going on right now with their long sleeve shirts. So if you're wanting to get a head start on your winter collection, hunttoharvest.com has it all ready for you. And they still have that mystery box special going on where you can get 3 shirts chosen at random sent to you for just $33. Be sure when you go to checkout to use that promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY18923 for even more savings at checkout at hunttoharvest.com.
So like I said, Martin Truex Jr., he dominated today, led 254 of the 301 laps that was run at New Hampshire. His first win at this track and what is pretty much a home track for him. Grew up going to this race. And for Martin, while it was domination for him, it wasn't a snooze fest of a race. There was plenty of action going on throughout the track. You had drivers racing hard side by side, 3 wide going through the corner. So while we weren't getting a whole lot of battles for the lead, it was still plenty to see throughout the field. It led to some hard racing, drivers bouncing off of each other. It was a good, solid race, probably one of the better ones we've had at New Hampshire in quite some time. And Martin, with this win, I feel like is setting himself up to be a favorite for this championship. I know we still got 6 races before the playoffs start, but ever since Martin's win at Dover, it's like he is shaking off the rust, and we are seeing the Martin Truex Jr. of old. He's running up front more often. He's becoming more of someone to contend with week in and week out. Now, he did have a couple rough runs over the past couple weeks at Chicago Street Course as well as Atlanta. Now, Chicago Street Course, that was its own animal. He was strong at the beginning part of the race, but when the pit strategy got flipped, he got off track a couple times. Just was not able to have a solid finish at the end of the day. Atlanta, he was able to lead a handful of laps, but just didn't get a strong finish there as well. But like I said, ever since Dover, we've been seeing him more up front and battling for the wins like we used to back in his championship contending days like 2017 and 2018. So Martin Truex returning to old form a little bit here and could be someone to watch as we get ready to go into these playoffs if he can keep this momentum up. And you had some drivers who had strong cars or big-name drivers that really struggled to get a solid finish on the day. You had Kyle Buschrick at the end of stage 1. That took him out altogether. He finished in last. You had Eric Almirola, who once again was showing a lot of speed at New Hampshire. He was running up in the top 3 for most of the first stage. There towards the end of stage 2, the caution came out. With pit strategy, his team took 2 tires. They had some trouble with the right rear, but assured him that the tire was tight. When they went off into turn 1 on the restart, that was not the case. The tire came loose and Eric crashed out, which was unfortunate because this was probably, besides Daytona, one of his best chances at getting a win to lock himself in, and he looked to be someone that could contend for that. But that took him out of the race. You then had Christopher Bell, who was at worst a top 5 car. He wrecks and spins out by himself late, setting up a late restart at the end of the race. And then Ryan Blaney, who honestly was the driver that I think could have contended with Truex Jr. He was keeping up with him for a good bit of that final stage before the final pit stops where Truex got such a better pit stop than Ryan Blaney. On one of the late cautions, you had Blaney that came in for a 2-tire stop. There was some miscommunication or something going on because as soon as the jack dropped, Ryan took off, caught the air hose of the front tire changer who was trying to run around the car, and therefore that was a safety violation or a penalty for removing equipment from the pit box. And that pretty much ended Brian Blaney's day. He came away with a 22nd place finish. Now, on the flip side of that, you had Austin Dillon, who also worked the pit strategy game. He comes away with a 9th place finish, his first top 10 since the Coke 600, a much-needed top 10 for him, but not as bad as Chase Briscoe, who finished in 10th place. This was his first top 10 since Talladega. And what was a hot stretch for Chase at that time in the schedule, looked to be a guy who could step up and compete with Kevin Harvick to put SHR into contention for races, and it has just been a miserable season for him since. A much-needed top 10 for Chase in this one. And then you have Eric Jones. While he didn't come away with a top 10 finish, he did come away with 11th, a solid finish for this 43 team. Now, swapping gears over to the playoff picture, after this race, you have Bubba Wallace, who's now just 2 points above the cut line, and Michael McDowell, who is only 1 point above this cut line. And things are really tightening up for this final playoff spot, or the final 2 playoff spots, however it plays out. And with that 1 point gap between Michael McDowell and Daniel Suarez for the final playoff spot, that's all in part due to Michael McDowell getting a 10th place finish, 1 extra point in stage 1. And that just goes to show how important each and every stage is and will be going forward in these final 6 races. You have Daniel Suarez, like I said, who's -1. You have AJ Allmendinger, who's 20 points back, but has really come on strong here lately and will be someone to watch in these final 6 races as we get ready to go to what is his bread and butter, the road course races. Ty Gibbs, he took the biggest hit of all the drivers right there at that playoff cut line. Coming into this race, he was 16 points below the cut line, now 41 points due to a 27th place finish. Now you have Alex Bowman, who did gain 2 spots in the point standings to get himself back up inside the top 20, but he's still 42 points below that cut line after finishing 14th today. And for Bowman, it just doesn't seem like the speed is there as it was in the first 10 races when he looked like a guy that could contend for a championship. And then below Bowman, you have Justin Haley, who is 46 points below the cut line, and Austin Cindric, who's 51. Now, for Chase Elliott, he is 60 points below that cut line, and this really was a pretty rough day for Chase at New Hampshire. He never seemed to have the car to get up there and get in the mix, to get some stage points, to get a top 10 finish. He still got a solid top 15, but he needed better for a point situation. He came into this race 60 points below the cut line. He leaves it still 60 points below the cut line, and this is coming at a crucial part of the season for him where he has to be going out and getting max points. And he is aware of that. His team is aware of that. But it just did not seem like they had the car to go out and do it today. But luckily for Chase, we're still in a strong part of the schedule for him. We have Pocono coming up where he is the defending winner of this race. We also have Watkins Glen where he has won a couple times and been strong every time out there. You also have the Indy Road Course where, and like I said, we know how good Chase is on road courses. So still some opportunities to go out and get match points and possibly put yourself in victory lane to go ahead and lock yourself in. But the window is closing, so we know that pressure is going to start building up for this 9 team. And it's just going to be a question of how do they respond to it from here going forward. So looking at the drivers that are below the cut line and looking at the tracks we still have to go to and how these drivers shape up to them, you have Alex Bowman, who coming up, you have Pocono and Richmond. Those are going to be his 2 best bets to get as many points as he can to put himself in a better situation points-wise to go for the final spot in the playoffs. At Richmond and Pocono, he's a previous winner there. Watkins Glen, he does not have a top 10 yet there, so that's going to be a struggle race for him, I believe. And really it's the same there as well for the Indy Road Course. So for Bowman, it's going to be really crucial for these next 2 weeks to go out there and get all that he can in the stages to close that gap on the playoff cut line. Now, for Bubba, his strongest tracks, I feel like in this final run, is going to be tracks like Pocono, where his performance has improved each and every year to the point where he got a solid top 10 last season. And then you have Michigan, where he came away with the pole and got a 2nd place finish there last season. Watkins Glen is probably his worst on the schedule. He has around a 28 average finish there. And we all know how good he is at Daytona. So I feel like Bubba is good to get in on points if needed. Now, Michael McDowell, he did get a top 10 last year at both Pocono and Richmond, but in Michigan, in the last 5 races there, he does not have a top 10. His average finish is around 25th. We know how good he is at road courses. He was very strong at Watkins Glen and the Indy Road Course. He got a top 10 at Indy last season. So Indy and Watkins Glen, I think, are going to be his best spots to gain points and try to build up a gap possibly to that final spot. And if he gets pushed into the corner, he always has Daytona. He has a 1 Cup Series win there at the Daytona 500. And at super speedways, McDowell always seems to be up in the mix for a good top 10 finish, at least on the super speedways. And yes, you do have Austin Cindric, who is strong at super speedways and road courses. You have Justin Haley, who I think is going to be someone to watch at Daytona if he is still below that cut line. Him and his team, they're going to be swinging for the fences. We know Colleague likes to collect trophies, and they also want to get their teams into the playoffs. But the biggest question mark for me in this final stretch to the playoffs is AJ Allmendinger and Chase Elliott. Chase has had very strong results at each of these tracks. He's a former winner at Pocono, former winner at Watkins Glen, and he has, in the last 5 races at Michigan, 4 top 10s. And like Michael McDowell, like Austin Cindric, Chase, AJ, they're the strongest at the road courses, it seems like, especially AJ. He's won at both the road courses that are remaining on this regular season schedule, both Watkins Glen and the Indy Road Course. And he has improved quite a bit on the ovals. That's what's put him in this spot to be within striking distance of the playoff line. So with the drivers that I mentioned that are within striking distance of the point situation, with the tracks that we have coming up on this remaining regular season schedule, I think we are in line for the tightest battle for the final playoff spots that we've ever seen and since this playoff started for NASCAR, going all the way back to the Chase era. Each of these drivers have their own strengths, and a lot of them are at the same track. So it's going to be about who can put together the most complete race from flag to flag, who can get the most stage points, who can come away with the top 10s or squeeze out that extra bit of speed to get ahead of the other by the time the checker flag falls. And it's not going to be just on the drivers. It's also going to be on the pit crews. This is going to be a high-pressure situation over these final 6 races. As fans, it's going to be fun to sit back and watch. Each race is going to get more and more tense, and I look forward to seeing all this build up to when we finally get to Daytona to end our regular season. And that'll wrap up today's episode of 3 Wide. As always, thank y'all for joining me and watching along. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you will know when our new videos drop, and including our weekly fantasy picks. Also, be sure to click on the link below in our description to our sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Check out their awesome hunting apparel, and be sure to use that promo code RADNY18923 at checkout. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and we will see y'all same time next week and go over all the action from Pocono.